Julia Gillard.
When I was growing up in Australia in the 1960s and 1970s, many girls of my era would have been taught that they didn't need to think too much about career and ambition because they would probably work for a few years, but their life would be about being at home as a mother. And by the time I exited student politics, having served as the national president of the Australian Union of Students, I had formed the ambition to go into Parliament, to go to the place where I thought you could have the greatest impact and make the most change. I really had to learn what it was like to come back from a failure and to persevere, to learn to pick yourself back up and to decide that you're going to try again. So it was with a sense of absolute delight that I was finally pre-selected and elected in 1998 to go to the nation's parliament. There would be a lot of notice of the fact that I was the first woman to serve in this job, a lot of commentary. On the one hand, a lot of delight, a sense of, you go girl and women have broken a glass ceiling, and some concern that this is all new and not the image of leadership that people are used to. But the work of equality is under deep challenge. Deep challenge from the kind of politics we're seeing in the US, deep challenge from the so-called populist politics we're seeing across Europe.
Your misogyny speech became a defining moment in your legacy and Australian politics. Could you comment on the initial reception of the speech and how you believe its influence and impact has changed over time?
Yeah, sure. I didn't know I was going to be giving that speech until I gave it. I thought that I was going in for question time. I knew that the theme of the day would be sexism because the man I referred to in the speech, Peter Slipper, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who I had supported to be Speaker, had been unmasked as having sent some very sexist text messages. Now, the fact I couldn't have known about those messages when I supported him to be Speaker, never let the facts get in the way of a good parliamentary attack. So I did ask my office to get together Tony Abbott's sort of top 10 sexist quotes, and I've joked since that was done in record time, one of the easiest research jobs I ever set them. The Leader of the Opposition moved a motion, and the speech you've just seen, or the extract, is my speech in reply. Immediately I knew in the Parliament that it had been a strong and powerful speech.
Do you think gender equality is in a better place now than when you're Prime Minister? And if not, then what do you think we need to do about it?
The thing that's a bit better, I think, is that the traditional media are far less gendered in their reporting now than they were when I was Prime Minister. And I think our degree of understanding about unconscious bias and the psychological barriers which mean we receive women leaders differently, I think that has deepened in the years since. What I think has got worse is social media is very toxic for women leaders, very common for women to see death threats, rape threats, and these things are not just in the online environment, they shade into the real world. I am very proud of the work we did to build the National Disability Insurance Scheme. By the standards of the world, Australia has a good healthcare system, but we were not doing the right thing by people with disabilities. I'm proud of some of the things we did internationally, including reaching a new strategic dialogue with India, and with landing new strategic architecture with China whilst deepening our alliance with the US. In terms of regrets, alongside Americans, Australia per capita is the most emissions-intensive economy in the world, and we needed to make a difference to that. What I regret is we didn't land the politics of it right, the community campaigning of it right. The current Labor government, the Albanese government, has embarked on a series of climate measures which I think are very important and effective for change. The Conservative opposition that Tony Abbott led, you saw him on screen, they were really, a significant proportion of them would have been climate denialists. They would have just simply said the climate is not changing, the science is wrong. then there would have been a section that would have said, look, the science is right, the climate is changing, but Australia is a very small proportion of emissions globally, so until the big players like the US and China act, you know, what are we going to do? We're not going to make any difference. Why should we turn our economy upside down when others are not doing anything? That's how they would have characterised the debate. Globally, of course, the debate now is really where to post the US withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord, and I am hopeful that in many parts of the world, particularly in Europe, that notwithstanding that American turnaround, that people will keep pursuing climate initiatives and major corporations will keep pursuing climate initiatives too.
And in terms of education, which you mentioned briefly before, where are we now with sort of the progress in terms of education? What more needs to be done?
We know more now about how, if that development is jeopardised in the earliest years, and I'm talking, you know, babies, toddlers, very, very young children, that will still show later in life. I think the focus is going to be more there, and the science will keep partnering with us so that we can measure developments and change in real time in a way that we're not able to quite do yet. And in my years post-politics, I did lead a commission of inquiry into improving early childhood education policies. I think there's a lot to be done there.
What was the hardest lesson you learned about leadership that you think too many aspiring leaders only realise too late?
The hardest lesson is how absolutely ruthless you need to be with your priorities. The, 2, 3, 4 things I can truly make a difference on, and organise your time and your efforts behind those things, which inevitably means saying no to a lot of people, or you actually won't make big change in anything. And I think it's a lesson that leaders ultimately learn, but the earlier you learn it, the better, the sharper, more focused you are.
Do you think power changed you in ways you didn't expect, and if so, how?
I don't think it changed me as a person, no. I think I've had sort of experiences that I never would have had in any other walk of life. Personality-wise, I don't think it changed me. And I think part of the reason for that is just the, grounding that you have through your family and friends and the people who have known you for forever.
Great, thank you so much, Julia, for answering our questions, and please have a huge applause for Julia.